Good afternoon, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Adam Kraut. I'm a lawyer. I practice firearms law. Don't hold being a lawyer against me, please. I also host a YouTube show called The Legal Brief, where we dispel the various legal myths and misinformation surrounding various areas of the gun world. And on occasion, I've been known to put pen to paper to write an article. Also, according to the billing for speakers today, I am a Second Amendment activist. Some may prefer the word advocate. And it's so great to see so many of you fellow Second Amendment advocates, because that's exactly what you folks are, Second Amendment advocates. Or if you prefer some Oregonian pride, perhaps you're Article 1, Section 27 advocates as well. Some people think that if you're not standing up on stage in front of a crowd, behind a microphone, or being blasted all over the internet, that you can't be or you're not an advocate. Make no mistake, that is patently false. Advocacy takes many forms. Some put you up in front of a crowd behind a microphone. Others involve different media platforms, but usually it's things like showing up at gatherings like this, contacting your representatives, or can even be as simple as sharing your passion for firearms with someone who's unfamiliar or undecided on the topic. And if we're taking a poll as to what I think is most important, it's the latter one, sharing your passion. Sharing your passion about firearms with another is possibly the single most effective way to change somebody's perception on guns. You see, growing up, I grew up in a house where we didn't own any guns, and quite frankly, we never really talked about them. They weren't part of our lives. At some point, my parents bought me a BB gun and I took it around the backyard, but nobody ever showed me how to properly use it in a safe manner or even the basic function of it. It wasn't until one fateful day when I was 12 years old at Camp Horseshoe in Rising Sun, Maryland, that I was put behind a bench on the rifle range. That was the day, at least for me, my life changed in relation to firearms. I was peering down the sights of a Marlin Bolt Action 22. By the end of that week, I had earned my rifle merit badge, and I had gone back to that range for the open shoots for scouts every night. When my parents came to pick me up, I wouldn't shut up about how much fun I had at camp, particularly the rifle range. A couple years later, I turned 18 years old, so I did what every 18-year-old does. I went out and bought a gun. It was a Remington 870. It was a Remington 870, and when my parents found out I had bought it, they told me to get rid of it. I still have my Remington 870. When I turned 21, I went to my local sheriff, I applied for my license to carry, and I bought my first handgun, an H&K P2000. My parents again started to question my decision-making process. They were dismayed, to be quite frank. At this point, the conversation about guns in our home had been happening for some time. I bought more guns, including an AR-15, which made my parents even more unhappy with me. I was even asked, what do you need that for? And the questions that you usually get from people that don't understand the usefulness of firearms. Right around the time I turned 23, my dad approached me out of the blue and asked me to take him shooting. So naturally I obliged. We went to the range, and after some basic firearm safety, we started to shoot. You see, folks, this is where it all started to change. After shooting a few rounds, that same stupid grin that was on my 12-year-old face back at Camp Horseshoe was now on my dad's. Shortly after our trip, he bought his first gun. He got his license to carry. And his attitude about firearms began to change. While he still held some views that were contrary to mine, such as the usefulness of AR-15s and standard capacity magazines, he went from being staunchly anti-gun to somewhat pro-gun. And as time wore on, his opinion about AR-15s and standard capacity magazines has also changed. He now believes that people should have them and understands that the Constitution protects that right. However, change didn't happen overnight. You see, my dad was born in New York, grew up in New Jersey. His only experience with guns was what he saw on TV shows, on the news, and in movies. It wasn't until we went shooting that he ever even held a gun. But just like that, the myths and misinformation he had been fed his whole life started to dissolve. So, if the question you have is, what is the most effective thing you can do to help solidify the future of firearms rights here in Oregon and here in the United States, I would tell you it's as simple as just taking a new person shooting. Show them that guns are just tools that can be used for the defense of yourself and your loved ones, or even just having a good time with friends at the range. Your positive interaction with them will likely change their perception on firearms and may even possibly turn them into a future Second Amendment advocate. So, while engaging in one-on-one interactions like that may help sway the opinion of a person, there are others who require a different sort of touch. Every once in a while, some elected officials need a reminder that they're elected to serve the people. And that's why we've assembled here today, to remind the people that work in the marble nut house behind me, their words, not mine, that they are in fact public servants. Now, some of them do know that. Representative Post was here, he spoke. Senator Linthicum also already spoke. Senator Thatcher already spoke. And you'll be hearing from Senator Linthicum later on. Unfortunately, nowadays it seems that more often than not, others forget that not only are they serving the people, but they need to do it within the bounds of both the federal and state constitutions. Oregon adopted its constitution back on February 14th, 1859. Article 1, Section 27 enumerates the right to keep and bear arms. It states that people shall have the right to bear arms for defense of themselves and the state. The federal constitution declares that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. In District of Columbia versus Heller, the Supreme Court held that there's an individual right to bear arms, and that was incorporated by the 14th Amendment due process clause in McDonald versus Chicago. Yet, even in spite of Oregon's clear constitutional provision, Senator Wagner and Representative Salinas sponsor a bill that would eviscerate your right to keep and bear arms. SB 501, which I'm sure you're all intimately familiar with, would impose a magazine capacity limit of 5 rounds, limit the purchase of firearms to 1 long gun and 1 handgun in a 30-day period with a permit, and require background checks on ammunition, limiting it to 20 rounds every 30 days. Fortunately, Senator Przansky has decided to stop that bill from being heard in committee. However, that doesn't mean the threat is over, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on. SB 501 is one of many bills that have been introduced this session that seek to limit your ability to exercise your constitutional rights. You can find a complete listing of these bills on fpcaction.org, and I'm sure the NRA website has them as well. But what I'm certain of is, I'm certain that everybody here took the time to contact your senators to tell them to vote no on SB 501. However, I've had many conversations with people across the country that tell me that they don't have time to reach out and let their representatives or senators know how they feel about certain bills, and others just say that, I don't know what to do, how do I do it? Be it state or federal, the process is very easy. I always encourage people to just pick up the phone and call. Now, you heard from Representative Post earlier tell you that form letters he doesn't like, he likes them to be a little bit personal, and that's great. If you have the time and you have the know-how, do that. Most importantly, it can be done quickly. I've posted pictures of my call logs where I've contacted all my representatives and it's been under 5 minutes. I suggest storing their main office numbers in your phone. That way you can call on your way to or from work, during your lunch break, or whenever else is convenient for you. No matter what time works best for you, it's important that you take action. If you prefer a different method, again, websites like fpcaction.org and the NRA's website all have ways that you can contact your senators via electronic means, and your representatives as well. At the beginning of my remarks, I called you all advocates. But your advocacy does not stop here today with this rally. Once you guys depart Salem and you head home, there's more work to be done. There's more advocates to forge, and there's representatives to be contacted. The struggle to preserve our right to keep and bear arms never stops, nor should any of you. Thank you.